Western Mass News is your election authority. We are 1 week away from the big elections, and thousands across the Commonwealth will decide what they want for Massachusetts.
That includes ballot question 2, which is about dental costs. So Western Mass News reporter Matt Price is getting answers about what you need to know about this particular question before filling out your ballot.
Massachusetts voters will decide yes or no on multiple ballot questions this election, and one of them could impact their dental care. As American International College economics professor John Rogers tells Western Mass News, ballot question 2 would determine regulations on dental insurance carriers.
The basic idea is to require insurance companies for dental insurance to limit the amount that they spend on overhead, which is their profit plus administrative expenses, to 17%.
Question 2 is on the ballot because the State House and Senate did not take a vote in early May. The Massachusetts Dental Society, the Alliance of Independent Dentists Massachusetts, and other Massachusetts dental groups are in support of this question, which, if voted yes, would require dental insurance carriers to meet a medical loss ratio of 83% and require the insurer to refund the excess premium to its covered individuals and covered groups. It would also require dental insurance carriers to submit an annual comprehensive financial statement to the Division of Insurance. And it would authorize the Commissioner of the Division of Insurance to approve or disapprove of any insurance rates.
I think people would like to see, hey, we're paying premiums toward dental insurance the same way you do for medical insurance. You can see how much is spent on overhead and profit versus how much is spent actually treating patients.
If voters decide no on this, then insurance companies will continue to decide their administrative costs without any oversight. Rogers says one main reason why many dentists are in support of this measure is because they believe the money should go towards the patients.
It's a better deal for them, so the ADA, the American Dental Association, is very much behind this. The insurance companies obviously don't want to be regulated any more than they already are.
Rogers says a main reason why this topic is important is because of one word: transparency. The no side, though, has a different take. Western Mass News spoke with former state senator Jim Welch, who worked on dental insurance issues as a legislator. Says voting yes would mean increased costs for employers and families.
Unfortunately, when that type of change, that type of dramatic change happens without the proper scrutiny, the proper vetting of an important policy like this, sadly, it's the voters or the consumers in this case that unfortunately are affected the most.
Stay with Western Mass News for the final results of this question. In Springfield, Matt Price, Western Mass News.